Sam Cole was polishing his best boots, the worn leather gleaming under his practiced hand, when the war drums began their thunderous echo through Whisperwind Valley. The rhythmic pounding seemed to swallow all other sounds, a physical presence that vibrated through the air and the ground beneath his feet. He froze, the soft cloth still in his grasp, his breath catching in his throat. Today was supposed to be a day of new beginnings. His bride-to-be, a woman named Eleanor, was finally set to arrive from St. Louis. For 3 lonely years, Sam had carved out a solitary existence in this isolated corner of the Colorado Territory, a sanctuary where the past could no longer find him. That isolation had been his only comfort, until now. The drums could mean only one thing. The war party of the Shoshone, a fearsome band of raiders who had been tormenting settlements 50 miles to the south, was moving north, and they were close, far too close. Sam stepped onto the sun-baked porch of his cabin, his calloused hands gripping the rough-hewn wooden rail. The afternoon sun cast long, fading shadows across his property, but the world felt different, wrong. The herd of cattle, usually scattered and grazing peacefully, was now bunched together near the barn, agitated and restless. Even his loyal dog, an old red-boned coonhound named Rufus, whined softly, his ears pinned back against his head. A gasp escaped his lips as he thought about Eleanor. Her stagecoach was scheduled to arrive before sunset, taking the main trail that led directly through what was now enemy territory. She was riding straight into a meticulously laid snare. She had no idea that the man she had agreed to marry sight unseen had just become the most dangerous person to be near in all of the Colorado Territory. He slid down from the roof, his mind racing. The sensible thing would be to grab his horse and attempt to escape through the narrow creek bed on the eastern side of the valley. Maybe he could slip past them in the growing twilight, unnoticed. But that would mean abandoning Eleanor to whatever fate awaited her when her stagecoach rolled into this valley of death. The war drums began to pound again, louder this time, more insistent. They weren't just announcing their presence anymore. They were communicating, coordinating, their planned assault about to begin. But what Sam didn't know was that the leader of this war party had been watching him for weeks, waiting for this exact moment, and the arrival of his bride was no coincidence. Sam loaded his Winchester with shaken hands, his mind counting his ammunition, 43 rounds against 400 warriors. The math was simple and terrifying. He had heard stories about what happened to isolated homesteaders who got caught by war parties of this size. None of those stories ended well. He thought about Eleanor's last letter still folded neatly in his shirt pocket. She had written about her excitement to finally meet him, about the new dress she had bought for their wedding, about starting a new life where her past would be a forgotten memory. She trusted him to protect her, to give her the life she had dreamed of. Now he might be the very reason for her death. The war drums stopped. The sudden silence was somehow worse than the pounding. Sam's ears strained for any sound. But even the wind seemed to have died down. His cattle had gone completely still, as if holding their breath. This was the calm before the storm. Then he heard it. The faint clip-clop of hoofbeats. Not the thundering charge he expected, but the steady, deliberate sound of a single horse approaching from the south trail. His heart hammered against his ribs as he realized what that meant. Someone was riding straight into the trap, unaware of the warriors positioned along every ridge. Through his spyglass, he spotted the rider, a young Shoshone brave, but something was wrong. The warrior's hands were raised high, and he carried a white cloth tied to a long stick, a flag of truce. The horse moved slowly, deliberately, as if the rider wanted to be seen from a distance. Sam's mind reeled. In his 3 years of living in this valley, he had never had direct contact with any of the tribal war parties. He'd heard they sometimes took prisoners for negotiation, but this felt different, more personal. The brave was heading straight for his cabin, as if he knew exactly where to find him. The rider stopped 50 yards from the porch, well within rifle range, but far enough to show he wasn't looking for an immediate fight. He was young, perhaps 20, with intricate war paint covering half his face. But what truly caught Sam's attention were the man's eyes. They weren't filled with the rage he expected. They looked almost satisfied, as though everything was going exactly according to a prearranged plan. The brave called out in heavily accented English, "Sam Cole, we need to talk." The fact that the stranger knew his name sent a shiver of fear through his veins. Sam stepped onto his porch, rifle ready but not yet aimed. Talk about what? The warrior's lips curved into what might have been a smile. About the woman you're waiting for. About why we're really here. He paused, letting that sink in. About the choice you're going to have to make when her stagecoach arrives in 2 hours. What the brave said next would shatter everything Sam thought he knew about this day. The warrior's words hit Sam like a physical blow. Your bride isn't coming here by accident, Cole. She's coming because someone told her exactly when and where to find you. Sam's grip tightened on his rifle. What are you talking about? Eleanor and I have been writing letters for months. She chose to come here. The warrior shook his head slowly. Letters can be written by anyone. The woman you think you know doesn't exist. He reached into a leather pouch and pulled out a folded paper. This is the real Eleanor Maeve. She died of fever in St. Louis 3 weeks ago. The blood drained from Sam's face. The brave tossed the paper onto the ground between them. Even from a distance, Sam could see it was an official death certificate. The woman he had been planning to marry, the woman who had written him such beautiful letters about their future together, was already buried in a St. Louis cemetery. Then who's coming on that stagecoach? Sam's voice was barely a whisper. Someone who needs you to believe she's Eleanor Maeve. Someone worth 400 warriors. The brave's eyes gleamed with something that looked almost like pity. Someone you've met before, though you don't remember her. Sam's mind reeled. Nothing made sense. Why would anyone go through such an elaborate deception? Who could possibly be worth surrounding an entire valley with a war party? He thought back through his past, trying to remember any woman who might have a reason to trick him this way. The warrior shook his head slowly. Letters can be written by anyone. The woman you think you know doesn't exist. He reached into a leather pouch and pulled out a folded paper. This is the real Eleanor Maeve. She died of fever in St. Louis 3 weeks ago. The blood drained from Sam's face. The brave tossed the paper onto the ground between them. Even from a distance, Sam could see it was an official death certificate. The woman he had been planning to marry, the woman who had written him such beautiful letters about their future together, was already buried in a St. Louis cemetery. Then who's coming on that stagecoach? Sam's voice was barely a whisper. Someone who needs you to believe she's Eleanor Maeve. Someone worth 400 warriors. The brave's eyes gleamed with something that looked almost like pity. Someone you've met before, though you don't remember her. Sam's mind reeled. Nothing made sense. Why would anyone go through such an elaborate deception? Who could possibly be worth surrounding an entire valley with a war party? He thought back through his past, trying to remember any woman who might have a reason to trick him this way. You're lying, he said, but his voice lacked conviction. Too many pieces were falling into place. The letters had always seemed too perfect, too understanding. Eleanor had never asked for specific details about his property, never questioned why he had chosen such an isolated location. She had accepted everything without the natural curiosity a real woman would have shown. The brave continued, 3 years ago you were a different man. You lived in a different place. You did things that left marks on people's lives. He gestured toward the ridgelines where the other warriors waited. She hired us to make sure you can't run when she arrives. She wants to look you in the eye when she tells you who she really is. Sam's legs felt weak. There had been a time before this valley, before he tried to become a simple rancher. A time when he had worn a badge and made enemies. A time when his decisions had consequences that followed people to their graves. He thought that life was buried, that 3 years of isolation had been enough penance. The sound of distant wheels broke through his thoughts. The stagecoach was coming up the southern trail, just visible through the canyon's mouth. The woman inside believed she was about to meet her future husband, but she was really coming to deliver a reckoning that was 3 years overdue. But the identity of the woman on that stagecoach would destroy everything. Sam thought he knew about his past. The stagecoach rolled closer, and Sam could hear the driver talking to his horses, unaware that he was delivering his passenger into the center of a carefully planned trap. The brave watched Sam's face carefully, as if he were studying every emotion that crossed it. You still don't remember, do you? The warrior said. Sheriff Cole of Deadwood Creek, the man who put innocent people in the ground because he was too proud to admit he was wrong. The words hit Sam like bullets. Sheriff Cole, a name he'd tried to bury along with the badge he'd thrown into a river 3 years ago. Memories came flooding back. The raid on the trading post. The family caught in the crossfire. The little girl who'd screamed as the bullets flew. He'd been so sure he was chasing the right men, so convinced he was bringing justice to the frontier. But he'd been wrong. Dead wrong. The Maeve family, Sam whispered. The full horror finally hitting him. Eleanor Maeve wasn't coming to marry me. She was already dead because of me. The brave nodded grimly. Her sister Clara survived that day. Barely. She spent 2 years planning this moment, learning everything about you, tracking you down when you disappeared. He gestured toward the approaching stagecoach. She wrote those letters. She became Eleanor in every way that mattered, just to get close enough to look you in the eye. Sam's hands trembled as he lowered his rifle. Clara Maeve. He remembered her now. A 12-year-old girl hiding behind an overturned wagon while her family bled out in the dirt. He'd been too focused on chasing the outlaws to notice that his posse's wild shooting had hit innocent people. By the time he realized his mistake, 3 members of the Maeve family were dead, including little Eleanor. The stagecoach was only a few hundred yards away now. Through his spyglass, Sam could see a woman's silhouette in the window. Clara Maeve, now grown up, and coming to collect a debt that had been 3 years in the making. What does she want? Sam asked, though he already knew the answer. Justice. The kind you never gave her family. The brave's voice was cold but not without respect. She could have just hired us to kill you. It would have been simpler. But she wanted you to know why you were dying. Wanted you to remember their faces when the end came. The sound of wheels on gravel grew louder. The driver was starting to slow down, seeing the cabin ahead. In minutes, Clara Maeve would step out of that stagecoach and face the man who destroyed her childhood in a hail of misdirected bullets. Sam thought about running. His horse was saddled and ready in the barn, but 400 warriors surrounded the valley, and more importantly, he knew he deserved whatever Clara had planned for him. He'd spent 3 years trying to forget what happened at Deadwood Creek, but the dead don't stay buried when the living refuse to let them rest. The stagecoach came to a stop in front of his cabin. The driver tipped his hat and called out cheerfully, "Delivery for Mr. Cole. Got your bride here, safe and sound." The stagecoach door opened, and a woman stepped down onto the dusty ground. She was nothing like Sam had imagined Eleanor Maeve would be. This woman was tall and lean, with dark hair pulled back severely, and eyes that held the cold fire of someone who'd lived with pain for too long. She wore a simple traveling dress, but there was something in the way she moved that reminded him of a predator circling its prey. Clara Maeve looked exactly like her father. The resemblance was so strong it made Sam's chest tight with guilt. Same strong jawline, same piercing blue eyes, same way of standing that suggested she wouldn't back down from anything or anyone. The stagecoach driver climbed down to unload her trunk, chattering cheerfully about the beautiful weather and the lovely scenery. He had no idea he'd just delivered a woman to her family's killer, or that 400 warriors were watching his every move from the surrounding ridges. Clara paid the driver and sent him on his way with a smile that never reached her eyes. She waited until the stagecoach disappeared around the bend, before she turned to face Sam directly. The transformation was immediate and chilling. The pleasant mask she'd worn for the driver's benefit melted away, replaced by 3 years of carefully nurtured hatred. "Hello, Sheriff Cole," she said, her voice steady and calm. "Or do you prefer Sam now? I suppose men like you change names as easily as you change towns." Sam set his rifle down against the porch railing. There was no point in pretending anymore. "Clara, you've grown up. Amazing what surviving a massacre will do to a person." She walked closer, each step deliberate and measured. "I was 12 years old when you rode into our trading post with your posse, guns blazing, chasing shadows and calling it justice." The brave whose name was Running Elk remained mounted, watching the confrontation with the patience of someone who knew exactly how this would end. Behind him, Sam could see more warriors moving into position along the canyon walls, not threatening, just present, making sure he understood that running wasn't an option. Clara stopped 10 feet away from the porch. "I spent 2 years tracking you down after you disappeared from Deadwood Creek. 2 years learning how to write like a lonely woman desperate for love. 2 years perfecting Eleanor's voice so you'd believe every word." "Why?" Sam asked, though he knew it was a stupid question. "Why not just have them kill me? Why go through all this?" Clara's laugh was sharp and bitter. "Because a bullet would have been too easy, too quick. I wanted you to hope first, to believe you'd found happiness, to think you'd escaped what you did to my family." Her eyes glittered with unshed tears that had been held back for 3 years. "I wanted you to feel what we felt when your bullets found us, instead of the outlaws you were really after." But what Clara revealed next about her true plan would force Sam to make the hardest decision of his life. Clara reached into her traveling bag and pulled out a small wooden box. Sam recognized it immediately. It had belonged to her father, Thomas Mave. The old man had carved it himself and kept his most precious possessions inside. Seeing it now in Clara's hands made Sam's stomach turn with fresh guilt. "Do you remember what you said to me that day?" Clara asked, her voice barely controlled. "After the shooting stopped and you realized what your posse had done." Sam closed his eyes, the memory hitting him like a physical blow. "I said I was sorry, that it was an accident, that we were chasing dangerous men, and that these things happen on the frontier," Clara finished. "That my family was in the wrong place at the wrong time. That I should be grateful you caught the real outlaws before they could hurt anyone else." She opened the wooden box and Sam could see something glinting inside. Not a weapon, but something worse. "Evidence, except you never caught the real outlaws, did you? Sheriff, you gave up the chase after what happened to us. Decided the case was too messy, too complicated, too much paperwork." The brave shifted in his saddle, his eyes moving between Clara and Sam like he was watching a carefully choreographed performance. This wasn't just about revenge. This was about something bigger. Clara pulled a folded document from the box. "I found them, Sam, the men you were really chasing that day. It took me 3 years, but I found them." She unfolded the paper, revealing wanted posters and sworn statements. "They're still alive, still robbing, still killing. Because you were too ashamed of your mistake to finish what you started." The words hit Sam harder than any bullet could have. In his guilt and horror over the Mave family's deaths, he'd abandoned his badge and fled into the wilderness. He told himself it was penance, that he was removing himself from a job he was too dangerous to perform. But the truth was simpler and more cowardly. He'd run away from his responsibilities. "The Slaughter Gang has killed 14 more people since Deadwood Creek," Clara continued. Her voice grew stronger with each word. 14 people who would still be alive if you'd done your job instead of running away to play cowboy in this valley. Sam felt the weight of those deaths settling on his shoulders. Bad enough that he'd killed innocent people through his recklessness, but knowing that his cowardice had led to more deaths, more families destroyed, made him feel like he was drowning in guilt. Clara held up another document. "This is a territorial warrant for the Slaughter Gang, still active, still valid." She looked at him with cold determination. "You're going to help me finish what you started 3 years ago. You're going to, and if I refuse?" Sam asked, though he already knew the answer. Clara gestured toward the warriors positioned around the canyon. "Then my friends here will make sure you never leave this valley. But your death won't bring back my family, and it won't stop the Slaughter Gang from killing more innocent people." She stepped closer, her eyes burning with purpose. "I want justice, Sam. Real justice. Not just revenge." Running Elk spoke for the first time since Clara's arrival. "The choice is yours, former sheriff. Die here as a coward, or live long enough to maybe earn some small redemption." But what Clara revealed next about the Slaughter Gang's latest target would force Sam to make the hardest decision of his life. Clara pulled out a final document from the wooden box, and Sam could see her hands trembling slightly for the first time since she'd arrived. "The Slaughter Gang isn't just killing random travelers anymore, Sam. They've gotten organized, smarter." She handed him a telegram dated just 5 days ago. "They're planning to hit the children's train next week." Sam's blood went cold as he read the telegram. Every month a special train carried orphaned children from overcrowded eastern cities to new families in the western territories. 43 children ages 6 to 15 would be on that train. Defenseless kids looking for new homes and new hope. "The train stops in Millfield to take on water," Clara continued. "Isolated station, no law enforcement for 50 miles in any direction. The gang knows the train carries a strongbox with adoption fees and family payments. They don't care the children will be caught in the crossfire." Running Elk nodded grimly. "We've been tracking the Slaughter Gang for weeks. They have 30 men now, well armed and desperate. They've been planning this raid for months. Sam felt sick. More innocent children just like Clara had been 3 years ago. More families destroyed because he'd been too much of a coward to finish what he'd started. The pattern was clear. His failures kept multiplying, creating more victims, more pain. "Why come to me?" Sam asked. "You could take this information to the territorial marshal, the cavalry, anyone with real authority." Clara's laugh was bitter. "I tried. They said the intelligence was unreliable because it came from tribal sources. They won't act on the word of Shoshone warriors, even when children's lives are at stake." She gestured toward the brave. "Running Elk's people have been watching the gang gathering evidence, trying to prevent this massacre. But white authorities won't listen to them." Running Elk spoke up. "Our children have been taken on trains like this, stolen from their families and sent to boarding schools. We know what it means when children are torn from those who love them." His voice carried deep pain. "We will not let more children die because grown men are too proud to work together." Sam realized the full scope of what Clara had planned. This wasn't just about revenge for her family's deaths. She'd forged an alliance between her quest for justice and the Shoshone's desire to protect innocent children. She'd turned his guilt into a weapon that could save lives. "The train reaches Millfield in 4 days," Clara said. "We can get there in 3 if we push hard. You know the slaughter gang's methods better than anyone. You know how they think, how they operate." She paused, letting the weight of the moment settle. "You can't bring back my family, Sam. But you can save those children." The sun was starting to set, casting long shadows across the valley. Sam looked at his cabin, his cattle, the simple life he'd built to escape his past. All of it suddenly seemed meaningless compared to 43 children, who would die if he chose comfort over courage. But the decision he was about to make would determine whether he died as the coward who ran from Deadwood Creek, or as the man who finally found the strength to face his failures. Sam walked into his cabin and emerged moments later carrying his sheriff's badge. He'd kept it hidden in an old coffee tin, unable to throw it away completely despite his shame. The metal felt cold and heavy in his palm, weighted with all the mistakes he'd made, and all the chances he'd missed to make things right. "I'll help you," he said, pinning the badge to his shirt. "Not because I deserve redemption, but because those children deserve to live." Clara nodded, and for the first time since she'd arrived, something that might have been respect flickered in her eyes. "This won't make us even, Sam. Nothing can bring back my family." "I know," he replied, "but maybe we can stop another family from going through what you did." Running Elk dismounted and approached them both. "My warriors will ride with us. The slaughter gang has stolen from our people, killed our young men, taken our horses. This debt goes both ways." Within an hour, they were ready to leave. Sam had gathered his weapons, supplies, and his best horse. Clara had changed into practical riding clothes and armed herself with a rifle that looked well used and carefully maintained. The warriors emerged from their positions around the valley, a disciplined force united by their shared desire to protect innocent lives. As they rode out of Whisperwind Valley together, Sam realized that Clara's plan had been perfect from the beginning. She hadn't just wanted to kill him. She'd wanted to force him to become the man he should have been 3 years ago. The man who finished what he started. The man who protected the innocent instead of running from his failures. The alliance was strange and fragile. A disgraced former sheriff, a young woman consumed by the need for justice, and a Shoshone war party united in their determination to save children they'd never met. But it was also powerful. They had skills the slaughter gang wouldn't expect, knowledge they couldn't anticipate, and motivation that ran deeper than simple greed. The ride to Millfield would take them through dangerous territory, past other settlements that might not welcome the sight of armed Shoshone warriors. But Sam found himself oddly hopeful for the first time in 3 years, not because he believed he could earn forgiveness. Some mistakes were too big for that, but because he finally had the chance to use his guilt for something productive. Clara rode beside him in silence for the first few miles. Then she spoke quietly. "My father always said that good men weren't the ones who never made mistakes. They were the ones who found the courage to fix their mistakes, no matter how much it cost them." Sam nodded, understanding that this was as close to forgiveness as he would ever get from her. It would have to be enough. 4 days later, when the children's train pulled into Millfield Station, It would find not just the slaughter gang waiting in ambush, but also a force of determined protectors ready to ensure that this time, the innocent would not pay the price for evil men's greed. The man who had once been too cowardly to face his failures was finally ready to become the sheriff he should have been all along. Subscribe to Sleep West, and don't miss the next ride.